Organized gang stalking quotes. The following are some quotes straight from several targets and victims and other individuals of organized gang stalking. Quote: Organized gang stalking is psychological warfare and torture plus mind control. They are getting discovered, easy to catch them. It's called psychological war. They use things that are hard to believe, but with evidences they are getting cut. Most of them use the same car, but they switch drivers, or change plate numbers. Also they are hurting innocent people's lives using helicopters, surveillance 24/7. Cars with missing hubcaps, to distract the victim. Organized stalking is a form of terrorism used against an individual in a malicious attempt to reduce the quality of a person's life so they will have a nervous breakdown, become incarcerated, institutionalized, experience constant mental, emotional, or physical pain, become homeless, and/or commit suicide. This is done using well-orchestrated accusations, lies, rumors, bogus investigations, setups, framings, intimidation, overt or covert threats, vandalism, thefts, sabotage, torture, humiliation, emotional terror and general harassment. It is a ganging up by members of the community who follow an organizer and participate in a systematic terrorizing of an individual. Mark Emrich. Country music star Carrie Underwood during a 2009 11 Question celebrity interview. Interviewer: why don't you use Twitter? Carrie Underwood: it just sounds like organized stalking to me. I talk to my fan club members and I blog, and they know what's going on. But as far as Twitter, I'll be in a restaurant and I'll get home and somebody tweeted, and they talked about what I ordered, and what I was wearing. In some cases, that can be dangerous, because you don't want everybody to know where you are every second of every day. It's a wee bit of an invasion of privacy. Eleanor White. We all know what it's like to be told to see a psychiatrist. It's not fun, when you know this stuff is real. Author David Lawson. Author of Terrorist Stalking in America. A common ruse used by these groups is that they are a citizens group which assists the police, and the illusion is reinforced by the case files they carry, which are complete with photos of the target. In order to establish bases of operation, they will enlist the assistance of neighbors. Those who do not cooperate can be targeted, which includes harassment of their families and damage to their homes and vehicles. Author David Lawson. Author of Terrorist Stalking in America. Groups begin their operations with the sensitization program. When they talk on their cell phones, they will ask if a target has been sensitized. Sensitivity tactics which are used to make sure the target knows he is being watched. Groups will also communicate with the target. Most communication is done by group members who make statements as they rush away. Some statements involve threats against the target and/or his family. Author David Lawson. Author of Terrorist Stalking in America. The primary characteristic of cause stalking is that it is done by large groups of people. A target will always be followed, but he is unlikely to see the same stalkers very often. Many of these groups include hundreds of people. Group members will attempt to physically intimidate a target if they can, by standing very close. Swarming is a tactic which is also used. It involves totally surrounding a target, so he cannot move. Staged events would include blockading a target's vehicle, so he cannot get out of a parking lot. Staged events are used in an attempt to prove the superiority of the group, and they control the target's time. Teams will typically stand around a target while he is paying for a purchase in a store, or sit near him in a restaurant. Terrorist Stalking in America, David Lawson. The participation of firemen, city workers and utility company workers helps give group members an illusion of legitimacy and power. Groups take revenge. That revenge can take the form of assault on the target or damage to his property. Groups try to impose a system of rewards and punishments on their targets. Targeted individual quote. The above happens constantly in stores that are not crowded, and out in public. This organized stalking group will have their members follow me into restaurants. They'll usually sit next to me and mention things about my personal life. This is done both to harass me and to try to evoke a sense of helplessness by not being believed if I were to tell someone about the harassment. This type of harassment is concealed to anyone else in the establishment. Some of the other patrons may recognize that something is not right with that group of people. This is probably because the tone, rhythm and volume of their conversations are not natural, they're rehearsed and artificial. It's almost like bad acting. Occasionally you'll even see other patrons looking over at them with an expression of what's wrong with those people. Personal information gathered by surveillance is used primarily for harassment. This has been well documented not only by countless targets, but also in books such as The War at Home, by Brian Glick, and Terrorist Stalking in American by David Lawson. These people also made their presence known while I was vacationing in Florida. This happened on both flights, as well as in several restaurants. The cult has met me in any state I've visited so far. Dr. and author John Hall. Dr. Hall is author of A New Breed, Satellite Terrorism in America, a book in which he boldly describes his personal experiences of being a target of the domestic terrorism covertly sweeping through the nation's communities. Ken's Fives Conger quotes Hall saying that targets are all voicing the same complaints: organized stalking, weird, electronic disturbances going on in their homes. This isn't stalking that's done by former spouse, or former boyfriend, or someone you know is disgruntled at you, but stalking that's done by total strangers in an organized fashion, Dr. Hall said. Learning what these throughout the nation and beyond report when trying to learn why they are being precision targeted with military-grade weapons and kept under what constitutes extremist foot soldier surveillance drive. Hall alleges to have been targeted by the same groups as Verbeff, including fellow doctors and the Texas Medical Board, for blowing the whistle on the criminal activity. He then faced the standard white coat bogus diagnoses of probable delusional disorder and ordered psychiatric treatment that whistleblowers consistently report. Targeted individual Jonathan quote, "They have performed all manner of hoaxes and tricks in attempt to freak me out, and have me make outlandish reports to the police, and have me diagnosed as mentally ill. I have experienced various types of gang stalking, where perpetrators organized with cell phones are always in visual contact with me at all times of the day and night. This is done conspicuously, when I'm alone, and more subtle, when others are with me, thus making it appear to them, if I'm imaging it. Another persistent technique that they have used is to cough, spit, or bring their hand to their face in my presence in effort to sensitize me to these behaviors and have me diagnosed as mentally ill. Stating to a mental health worker that people you don't know are making gestures to you as diagnostic criterion for paranoid schizophrenia. I have written many letters to authorities and received absolutely no response. This is probably because many mentally ill people make very similar claims, and the perpetrators know this and exploit it to avoid investigation. It is also clear on the basis of their cooperation in gang stalking activities that some law enforcement people and neighbors are cooperating, if not overtly colluding, making it impossible to enlist their assistance. Targeted individual quote, "My neighbors participate in this harassment and stalking. They have been bribed with home repairs. Those who cannot be lied to or bribed are threatened or blackmailed. I experience noise campaigns such as horns, fire truck and ambulance sirens, and alarms going off the instant I walk out of my house and down my street. Typically there are convoys of vehicles driving down my street, a side street, playing loud music, yelling and revving their engines as they pass my house day and night. Also, there has been ongoing noise harassment campaigns / construction on the houses surrounding mine." Targeted individual quote, "Other forms of harassment I've noticed include sensitivity operations. These operations are a very big part of the harassment campaigns, as reported by hundreds of targets across the nation. They are designed to capture the target's attention and let them know they are being harassed and followed." Targeted individual quote, "The goal is to get the target sensitized to very subtle triggers, so that once they are sensitized they can be harassed openly in a public place. These sensitivity programs are based on a science called neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. Used ethically, NLP dissolves phobias, sometimes in a single session. These cults use this science in a destructive format. See the tactics section for a description of how groups use this science. People who participate in organized stalking will walk by me and say things such as fiddle you, fiddle up, fiddlehead, scumbag, or they'll mention something about my personal life. Of course this happens to many people once in a while. Frequency and duration is the key." Targeted individual quote, "It is likely that prior to the harassment campaign, these perpetrators used citizens, informants, to help frame me in situations I was not aware of, pictures, testimony, complaints, etc., in an attempt to represent me in a very negative manner. I believe this because they are currently generating pressure on me via acquaintances and family, so these lies must be potent. I think a combination of lies and intimidation is at the heart of recruitment strategy. It is my belief that many of the people in my personal life are cooperating out of fear and have been given an illegal gag order during the so-called investigation. Some of these agencies have a documented history of including friends, family, and places of business in these harassment programs. See The War at Home, Brian Glick. This is basically a legal, mafia-style criminal network that operates outside of the law and has little accountability." Targeted individual quote, Gang stalking comprises a network of people focusing on a targeted individual TI. All sectors of society are involved, ranging from the neighbors to the media. A targeted individual TI is under surveillance and harassment 24/7. I believe the surveillance includes satellite, as I've written and drawn things in the privacy of my home which have been mimicked by the media, TV and internet. Personal info has been accessed from my computer and used in the same way. My mind is being read. Snippets of conversation I've had and things I've done are directed back at me. Radio also gets involved, jeeringly. Vandalism of my clothing. My car and home are accessed while I'm away. A helicopter rears its head, whether I'm on my way back from another city or in a game reserve. At one stage it flew over my home practically every day, but that seems to have stopped now. Once it circled overhead my home more than 17 times. This is an open secret where everybody knows that a person is being targeted and everybody contributes towards the persecution, but nobody will admit it to the targeted individual. These are a few examples of things which have happened to me. Repeated snippets of conversations, also known as directed conversation and mirroring. I had bought a hairpiece with the label Pretty Woman. When I got home, a message appeared on my cell phone sporting Pretty Woman with a big smile. She then morphed into Pretty Woman with no teeth. It was sent by a private number. A father and son were working at a conference. They both had very similar bags to mine. The son says to me, "I like your bag." I get to my drama class that evening, and as I get out of my car, I overhear, "I like your bag." I was looking up vegan recipes. Saw some taco ones. That guy at work slowly walks past me eating his taco. He stops in front of me and keeps eating. I pace my stall at one point. Guy with the pram comes out and starts pacing alongside me. At my metaphysical class, one of the women spoke about her daughter's flat burning down, and the tenant saying it was an electrical fault. This was at the exact same time I had asked the landlady about getting an earth leakage unit installed in the cottage, because the guy who looked at the geyser had said it was very unsafe, the place could just burn down. Targeted individual quote. My stalking experiences involve numerous repetitive tactics, some of which have been receiving constant and frequent wrong number phone calls, and spoofing caller ID calls, not really coming from the number that shows up on the caller ID, research spoofing phone calls, trying to make me think that everyone is out to get me. Also by receiving calls that claim to be from local police, state police and firefighters asking for donations. My privacy has been severely invaded by the perps through eavesdropping on my conversations in my own home, wireless bugging, as well as on my conversations from my ground, wire telephone and cell phone. The perps always make it a point to let me know that they have eavesdropped on other people's conversations, that I'm associated with as well, aka roving wiretapping. The perps sadistically taunt me by letting me know what they've heard in my conversations by various methods. One method is by having lots of junk mail and spammy mail sent to me with my conversation-related subject matter in them. Another method is by making sure that I'm within earshot of their acquaintances, hired strangers or passers-by, that are quoting words and even complete exact phrases derived directly from my private conversations, aka street theater. Other measures of harassment have included suppressing my efforts to make and keep friends, or to hold a job, by causing those efforts to fail through mobbing or lies. This always makes those failed efforts appear to be self-imposed. They have even screwed up appointments or service calls that I've arranged by phone and always manage to make it look accidental, or as if it were screwed up by worker incompetence. Shadow surveillance, not so shadowy, has been one of the main tactics of harassment. Different perps will either follow me to my destinations, or are already there ahead of me, and make no effort to stay hidden, obviously having been alerted by eavesdropping or some neighbor perps, because when they are there ahead of me, then they must know that I was going there. It is also very obvious that the perps have spread lies about me, causing people who were once friendly toward me to suddenly turn against me. They've managed to isolate me from family and old friends by causing tension, disagreements, suspicion, and doubt between us. They have weaseled their way into the lives of my family and friends, unbeknownst to most of them, in order to orchestrate the lynching. Targeted individual quote. People are going to watch this and not understand the people behind this use sophisticated psychological warfare programs and methods. They have access to intelligence on the target, or at least the designers do access, resources, and lots of money. Gang stalking program is tailored to the individual target, and the target's reactions also enter into the gang stalker's following moves against that target. These programs are connected to black projects. There is more than just what meets the eye. Targeted individual quote. I have often wondered how these people can live with themselves, and what it's like to have other people dictate the color shirt you should wear that day, when you should walk out of your house, mow your lawn, take a drive, and where you should go. It seems that those engaged in the low-level stalking have very low self-esteem, lack critical thinking, and have relinquished their own personal freedom in an incredible degree. In general, they appear to suck at life. Perhaps that is why they are comfortable attempting to ruin another person's. Targeted individual quote. Some people should be aware that this criminal enterprise might also be benefiting financially in other ways other than just the vigilante business. The victims also might be placed in non-consensual human experimentation programs, which is also financially beneficial. Also, sole hires to estates or land also might be targeted in this program. Targets are pushed to act out by the program, which is beneficial not only for possible false flag terrorism in extreme cases, but also benefits the prison and mental health industries. The program hides itself behind the double bind theory and hides beings, making its victims' testimony appear as crazy or outlandish. I pray every day that we can shed light on Holocaust that so many people in the world are experiencing. Targeted individual quote. I was and am still in a similar situation. This information is correct. Organized gang stalking has nothing to do with wife beating or abusers. This is done and used for, just like the video says, for control or revenge. Just like the video says, a few years ago my wife and her brother had a loud verbal altercation in which I had to defend myself from her brother, and the police was called shortly after this trash began being perpetrated against me, and I started thinking maybe this is friends of her brother taking revenge on me, or has something to do with the altercation we had, or someone is just keeping an eye on us, and all of this is because of that. A couple of months later I heard from a buddy I had not seen in a while that he was told by a stranger that I had beaten my wife, and that was why I was being constantly followed and harassed in public and at home, which was a complete malicious, slanderous rumor that some idiots had started. Almost 8 years later, me and my wife are still living together and never fight, and the brother still comes around, but yet this trash continues to this day, every day. It's simple, folks. These individuals want to piggyback onto individuals' problems and use reasons and excuses like this to cover themselves and keep their system of terrorism alive, so they can continue to do this to other people. This trash hasn't even gained full public or media exposure, and they are doing anything they can to condition your mind and keep it that way. The word's out. They are desperate and are being destroyed. Wake up and adjust your mind.